Hey everyone, welcome back to Unboxing the Underground, and I'm very excited to have Suziey Block on the channel this evening, and she is the star of such films as Where is Amy Pressman, Infernum, Wonder Valley, the Horror and High Desert trilogy, and my personal favorite, 2012's Entrance, which was co-produced and co-written by Suziey, and was praised as a horror obsession by none other than Stephen King himself. She's acted in a slew of shorts, television, and a variety of other feature films. Suziey, thank you so much for taking the time to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. This is great. I'm
So
excited.
I always kind of start out with a blanket question like this. But what was your journey, like the beginning of your journey into acting? Like what made you passionate about wanting to get into it? And tell me a bit about the process of landing your first role.
Okay, yeah, I think I came out being born as wanting to be how do you say it, like a little star. I was an only child, so I I loved attention. So I would always perform anytime I could for like my parents. Um, my friends, I would get my cousins involved. We would put on shows all the time. I got like a little video camera when I was little, and I just started making little movies and music videos. And yeah, I think that's like I was in dance, and then there was a audition, I think, in community theater, and I asked and begged my parents if I could go and audition, and I think that's how it got started, just kind of like being I don't know, a bored kid growing up in the country and looking for something to do. So yeah, I think that's kind of how I got into acting. I think I just always knew that's what I wanted to do. My parents told me I had to go to college, to have a degree to fall back on. Because I told my dad, I was like, I want to be an actress. He's like, oh, you want to be a waitress? And I was like, no. I'm a terrible waitress, by the way. I did try, but I'm not good. I was a pretty good barista, though. That I can do. But yeah, so God, I'm trying to think of how I got my first, what it was my first role. Oh, I was still living in Michigan. That's where I'm from, and I was in film, like doing like a film class, I think, like a horror film class, and there was like I don't even know how I got involved with this movie, but there was a movie being made, I think close to the college, and somehow I got to be like a production assistant on it. And it's on my IMDb. I think it's my very first credit. I think it's like 17,000 block. I don't even know. I don't have I somehow swindled my way, or not, I guess swindled, but like got my way into like a little role. At first I was just a dead body, and then I got like, I don't know, background role of like a waitress. And then there was like a hospital scene, and no one knew anything about the medical world. And my mom had driven me to set because it was in Detroit and it was kind of in a bad neighborhood. And she's like, you're not going by yourself. And so she went with me, and she's a nurse. So she actually got to be like she helped them like put the right tubes on like the person that was like in the hospital room, because they had like a catheter up their nose. My mom's like, that doesn't go there. But yeah, and I think that was like my first little like role. And then from there, I got to do like another production assistant job I helped my friend. He was doing wardrobe for The Island, that Michael Bay movie. And he's like, I need help. do you want to come help? And I was like, oh my God, yeah. And I just done a hair show. I did hair shows to make money. And so I think my hair was blue and black. It was like a weird style, very weird looking. And I went to help him and somehow got to be a background person. And then from there, Michael Bay like picked me out of the crowd and was like, "Oh, she'd be great." And then I was sent to wardrobe and makeup, and I was sitting in between Scarlett Johansson and Hugh McGregor, and they're getting their makeup done, and so am I. I'm like, "What's happening?" And then I basically had to eat pie. Um, in front of them. They like there's like a scene where they go into like a little diner and they're looking at the screen and they see that like I think some football player dies and they have like a conversation about it and it's like I'm in the middle of them eating pie and there's like a spit bucket that you could like once you took the bites, but I was like I cannot spit up my food in front of Hugh and McGregor. Like ew. Like I can't yeah. So but that got edited out. But that was like my first like real credit, I think. And then I came to LA. I was in college during all this. So once I graduated college, back to U-Haul and now I'm here. Does that answer your question?
It absolutely does. That
Okay,
is an
good.
amazing first role. I mean, edited out of the movie or not, what an experience it
Yeah.
was.
Yeah. I mean, I'm in other scenes, I think, in the background.
Mhm.
But like that specific, I was like picked because I think it was my hair. My hair was kind of futuristic and weird. I think he liked that. And then I also find out Michael Bay just liked, pretty girls too. So
Still does.
I was young, so I was like, oh, yeah.
You
Anyway,
mentioned in a horror acting class. In terms of like the horror genre, which you've been so consistently immersed in, I think pretty much throughout much of your career.
yeah.
Is there something special that draws you to that world, or did it just kind of happen by chance?
My dad really loves horror movies, and his whole thing growing up was like kids love to be scared. I don't know if I fully agree with that. My dad, on every opportunity he could would try to scare me and my friends. He showed me horror movies at a really young, probably inappropriate age to watch horror movies. Like Alfred Hitchcock was one of his favorite directors, so I remember seeing like Village of the Damned and Psycho and Birds and all these like older films. And I don't know, that I just started to like horror movies after that. I remember my cousins and I going to like the video store and grabbing the scariest, horror movie cover we could find, not knowing anything about the movie. And my mom, like oblivious, being like, oh, that's fine. So we'd rent it and watch it. I remember one time we rented Sleepaway Camp. And my cousins are much younger. I think there's like an age gap of like 5 years. And so, and then it goes down from that. So my cousins are little at this time because I'm little. I'm like 11 or 12 and watching Sleepaway Camp. And I don't know if you know that movie, but at the end, it's very inappropriate for little kids to see. And my mom came in right at that part. She's like, "What the fuck are you watching?" We're like, "Oh, it's a scary movie." And she's like, "That's a penis." And we were like, "Yeah." But yeah, I don't know. I think it's from that. I just started to just love horror movies. I just developed like I love the cheesy ones. I love the gory ones. I love them all. The only one I have a hard time watching, not because they're not good. I don't like the body horror. They're gonna stick something in their eye, like it really grosses me out, or any like surgical realness stuff. Like even Grey's Anatomy sometimes grosses me out, but like that stuff gives me the heebie-jeebies. And I'm not a huge fan of like the torture porn. I'll watch those though, but I'm not like I need a little bit of a story, even if it's bad.
Right.
Yeah, I want something. But yeah.
One of the things that I've always found so striking about your performances, whether that's Amy Pressman or Gal Roberts, is
I
how,
can't believe you watched Amy Pressman.
oh my goodness, I loved it.
Oh my God.
Loved it. Um, just how naturalistic and like grounded all of your performances are.
So
Um,
nice.
when you board a project that requires that kind of off the cuff nature, like what's your general approach to improv, especially if a project relies so heavily on it?
Um, Amy Pressman was one of, it's funny. I would serve coffee to this guy, the director, Matt, and he was like, I'm gonna write this, I'm gonna do this horror movie. And I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, I'm an actress, so let me know. I'd love to audition. And he was like, oh, okay. And I remember going to that. He like let me audition. I remember going to that, and he was like, well, why should you get this part? And I was like, "Ah, I don't know. I feel like I should get it because I'm an only child and I love to be the center of attention. So I think that's why I'd be great." And he, for some reason, liked the honesty of that answer. That one was like mostly improv. Same with Entrance, actually. So Entrance was mostly improv too, with like a loosely based outline of a script. Um, I don't know how. I've taken like a couple improv classes, but I can't really say that's why. I think maybe just the first rule of improv is, to say yes. So whatever they throw at me, I kind of have to go with it. But we would also get like at least a little bit of friend. Amy Pressman was like, oh, we get letters, kind of like Blair Witch, I think did, because that crew was in an RV in front of us. And so I never really saw the director much during Amy Pressman. And we were mostly left to like our devices. Mind you, those other two guys were not actors. I think I was the only actor besides my little brother and my parents. The killers did not do acting. One was a magician. He still is. He's very good. And then the other one I think makes houses smell well now. I'm not sure what he's up to. Um, but I remember this is kind of a weird story. Maybe I'm not answering your question, but I at the I had to play them against each other. That was in my notes, and they actually got like legit mad at each other and actually thought that I liked one or the other. And I remember when it was over, being like, "Oh, can we hang out?" And I'm like, "What?" And they're like, "Oh, it just seemed like we had a connection." I was like, "Oh, no." I'm like, "I have a boyfriend." And they're like, "What?" And I was like, I mean, when you're playing that character, like there's no time but I wasn't playing that character. I had to be Amy Pressman 24 hours a day. Like we all slept together. Like we all slept in the same RV. It was very guerrilla, very weird filmmaking. And that was and and yeah, and Matt also kind of wrote Amy Pressman in a way that was kind of like me, so I didn't have to be too much of not me, which was helpful. And with Entrance, Dallas and Patrick they made Karen and I hang out because we didn't know each other. And Daryl, the dog, is actually Karen's dog. And so we all had to hang out and become friends, and the dog had to get used to me. And Karen's not an actress either. She just wanted to always. I'm gonna give away something
No,
in
you're good. You're
Entrance.
good.
If you don't want to, it's an old movie, but if you don't haven't watched it now, then anyways. But always wanted to die in a movie. And so that's why she was like, I just want to die. Let's write a movie where I die. And so I think it's just getting like you get to know a person and then you just have banter. And I mean, we would do takes and Dallas would be like, that wasn't good. Let's do another one. Let's maybe talk about this. And we're like, oh, good idea. So, yeah, I went off. Did I get it?
Oh, absolutely. You answered it. You even stole some of my next question.
I'm a
Um,
talker. I'm sorry.
no, I love it. In terms of like the creative collaboration of Entrance, I recently listened to the commentary for that film in which you and the directors are on.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
and there was an almost sort of not quite like Dogma 95 rule making about making that movie, but like you can kind of only use sort of what's around you and kind of only pull from elements of real life. What was the like just the collaborative process of that film like? Because it really does, I think, unlike anything else you've done, have such a documentary feel that it just feels so eerie. Like how did that kind of camaraderie come about? And like I know you were a producer on it. Like what was your role in that regard as well?
Um, so, uh, funny story with entrance is I actually auditioned for Dallas, for another movie, and it's this really avant-garde kind of weird film that he wanted to do, with no talking. And I remember my manager at the time telling me not to go to that audition. He's like, "Oh, it's an indie. Yeah, I don't know if you want to go to it." And it was at like a house, and I remember my manager being like, "I don't know." And he was like, "If you go and it feels weird, don't go in." But it was fine. There's like a whole bunch of girls sitting outside in chairs, and I was like, "I think I'm gonna be fine." But it was me and another girl that we were doing callbacks with, and I ended up getting the email, and I in Michigan at the time when I got the email that I didn't get the part. And I had a couple glasses of wine, and I was very upset that I didn't get the part. And I was like, I thought I had this. What the fuck? And so I remember messaging Dallas and being like, "Oh, it's too bad. I personally think you picked the wrong girl, but that's fine." And I was like, if there's any way I can help, I mean, I just kind of want to be part of something. This just seemed different and cool than what like the rest of LA is doing, and I'm really bummed. And I'll do crafty or whatever, on this if I can. And I hit send, and then I woke up the next day and I was like, I should have done that. I had been drinking a little bit. I should have done that. And then I didn't hear from them for a while, and I was like, oh, you fucked up. You should not have sent that email. And then he messages me, and I get an email, I think weeks later, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, Susie, we love you. If there's like anything that we're gonna do in the future, we actually have this horror idea, and when that happens, like we're gonna call you because you'd be great for that." So then I'm thinking, that's never gonna happen. I'm never gonna talk to them again. And come to find out, they abandoned the movie they were going to do and decided to do Entrance. And Entrance started kind of without me. It started with Dallas and his now wife, Michelle, who was his girlfriend at the time, and Karen, which was Michelle's roommate. And they had this house that they lived in, and they just had this like, it started with Karen wanting to die. And they're like, okay, well, we have no money. So let's try to base it around the house. And what can we do with that? And so Dallas always talked about giving himself parameters and that he can't go out of because that's too much money. So like, setting up big shots too much money. So how can we keep it close? Let's keep it close then. Let's make it so that Susie's character, Susie, is always on camera. That way we're limited to all that other big stuff that might cost too much anyways. And I think that's how it got like that documentary kind of feel because we never left Susie. If you rewatch it, I'm never not on like in frame somewhere. And I got brought on, as a producer because they wanted a creepy mask and they needed something that wasn't copyrighted or used. And I had a roommate at the time who was a puppeteer, Eli Presser. He's still a puppeteer. He's still great. And he would sculpt things all the time. And I was like, "Can you make a creepy mask?" And he was like, "Sure." And then Dallas was like, "I'm going to give you producer credit for that because you brought Eli in." And then I had another girl in my acting class named Florence Hartigan, and they needed her role, which, I think everyone used mostly their real names. So I think she is Flo in that she gets like stabbed, in the kitchen. And I brought her onto the project as well. I was like, "Oh, you'll love her. She's incredible. She's from New Zealand. She's amazing." And she nailed it. And so they were like, "Oh, you get producer credit for sure because you're like bringing people in." So yeah, I think that's how that all came to fruition. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about, I mean, you mentioned like your performance is truly front and center in pretty much every scene, every frame of that film.
Yeah.
What was the prep like for the climax of that movie, which I still just is so impressive. It's essentially one unlong, one unbroken take.
Yeah.
And there's specific marks, there's effects, and the camera's pretty much here the whole time. Like, what was your prep like for that? And like, what were the challenges?
Um, that was, yeah, we called that, I try to remember if we shot, I think we shot pretty much that whole movie kind of in chronological order a little bit. It's been a while. But that was Hell Night. I think it was 2 nights of filming. And there is two hidden cuts in that long take, which they do really well. One's like on my back, and then one's through the doggy door, um, which I actually do crawl through, but the camera couldn't get through. I think they would have not cut if they actually could get the camera through. Um, but uh, but yeah, so they did most of the prep on like the gore effects, which were all real weapons that they like fixed up to be on people, which is amazing. I think that house was full of 10 to 15 people hiding that were turning lights on, turning lights off, prepping people on the fly before I come up the stairs. And then, like, I mean, there's a lot of people in that room, like, that you don't see that I see that are just like kind of quietly running around and tiptoeing and then going back and then hiding and then coming back out to do more. As like an actor standpoint, I just kind of go in it. I do a lot of like I took an acting class that actually named what I do, and I think it's called substitution. I thought maybe I was doing Meisner, but I really think it's like a substitution technique where I just really think like, what if this like happened to me? Like I put myself in there, like what these are my friends. So Karen would be like my best friend. So I substitute Karen as like my legit best friend in the whole world. I had a dog at the time, so Daryl was my dog. And I think it's just real emotions after that. And like there's someone actually after me. What would I'm seeing like my good friend who drove all the way back from Michigan. That's another like maybe that's my cousin, maybe that's my mom. Like I just kind of put people that I really care about in those situations. And then it just I don't know, it fucking comes out of me. I don't know actually how or where, but that was actually really hard to film too because I told Dallas to actually zip tie me. He had fake ones. And I was like, just you can't do fake because if it's a one take, I'm gonna really struggle and then I'm gonna break out. So go ahead and just put me in it. He's like, are you sure? I'm like, yes. And then I didn't think about all the sobbing and then the fact that I couldn't breathe because my nose was all snotty. So there's like scenes where I have to like run up those steps and I was like, I thought for sure I was gonna pass out. I was like, this is it. I'm I'm done for. And then you have, great people like Jonathan who's just laying in his own pool of blood on cold cement for like hours because he can't move because we can't mess up the shot. And we did have to do, I think we did it a total of 3 times. 2 times we didn't get all the way through because of something. We had to start over. But yeah, it's just I think that's the answer again. God,
No,
I just
absolutely.
keep going.
No, that's wonderful.
Okay, great.
Once that film was completed, like especially in your role as a producer and just a creative collaborator in general, not just as an actress, what was the process of getting it to an audience, and just how did Stephen King end up writing a review for it, which kind of catapulted the film?
Um, I think the smartest thing that we did was we bought a publicist. So I know they submitted to film festivals, and when we got into the Los Angeles Film Festival, they got a publicist. They hired a publicist because we needed to get people in the seats to see this movie. Because I'm not anybody. We didn't have anybody famous in our film. Like it was this tiny, tiny movie. And that she was amazing. She got us Fangoria, Dread Central interviews, and she got people like pumped up about the film before the festival actually even started. And so we sold out of our first screening so much that the festival gave us a second one, which was great. I remember Ty West went to see it. I was like, oh my God. And his movie was in it, The Innkeepers, at the same time. Entrance, both slow burn. So I remember Dallas and Patrick got to do like a panel with him and talk about slow burn, which is just so freaking cool. He did our Q&A at one of our screenings, which was like amazing. Um, and I have no idea how Stephen King saw it because after that, IFC Midnight picked it up. Um, I feel like there was another bigger studio wanting it too, but I think IFC won. I wasn't really involved in all that. I remember like signing all the paperwork for it. It was like buying a car or a home. I was like, oh, no, this is so cool. I don't know how Stephen King saw it. I really don't. I don't know if he streamed it. It was like under like what to stream and his article. And I remember like getting a call from a friend of mine um who reads those when he goes to the bathroom, Entertainment Weekly. And he called me. He's like, I was just reading this Entertainment Weekly and you're in it. And I was like, what? It's like, there's a picture of me? I was like, from what? He's like, no, there's a whole article with your face that Stephen King wrote. And I'm like, what? What? And I remember calling Dallas, and Dallas was like, what? And then I rushed to the grocery store because I had to buy them all. Because, like, oh my God, this is crazy. And then I ended up, like, grabbing as many as I could. And then I remember being like, I have to put some back because other people need to read it. So I remember, like, putting some, but it was like a collector's edition cover of Walking Dead.
Mm.
So I bought enough that I had a different cover because I had different covers. So I bought one of each, and then I left the rest. And then every time I had an audition and that magazine was there, I'd open it up to my page and just leave it in the room. But I don't know how he saw it. I till this day, like I know we tried to get his publicist to like to be us to send. We did a whole thank you and we like sent him a copy of the movie. I have no idea if it ever got to him. But yeah, that was just we didn't ask him to do that. No idea. He just watched it and I was like, this is crazy. Crazy. I love Stephen King. I used to read all of his books. I saw my dad took me to see Pet Sematary when I was a kid. He told me it was a nice movie. It was not. Um, yeah. Yeah. So,
I mean, I could tell you this, that like his review is how I first ever heard of it. And I was so intrigued. And there's not a more apt description than he could write that your anxiety builds to like Blair Witch levels. Like I watched
yeah.
Entrance for the first time, really not knowing where it was going. But I was so immersed in the kind of natural world. And when that shocker of an ending kind of hits you, I mean, it punches you right in the face. Like it's such an incredible film. Easily my favorite of your work.
Oh, nice. Thank you. Yeah, I had no idea filming that would go anywhere, really. We're just, you never know. I mean, I know they did like press screenings of it, and some people really like it, and then some people, one guy in a press screening stood up and just yelled "fuck you" to the screen when it was over. Because some people just do not are not happy. I know we talked about different endings. I feel like we filmed one, but that wasn't how we ended it. So that's yeah.
I think the ambiguity is all the better for it. I mean, it's very
Yeah,
good
I think
ambiguity. I mean, you end up beside this guy, the stalker, but
yeah. And he's like for those who watch it a bunch of times, he's in it a lot.
yeah.
Like in the background and stuff, which I thought was really smart on Dallas and Patrick's behalf to do that.
And it's funny, in rewatching it for this interview, in listening to the commentary, they point out every time he's on screen, and I never noticed it until they pointed
Yeah.
it out. But it's there in many scenes.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty good.
Switching gears to your
Sure.
performance in the Horror in High Desert
Oh
trilogy,
yeah.
especially the first one, was that like how was that doing that entire performance basically over Zoom?
It was interesting. Dutch I'm funny. I know Dutch because of Entrance. So I went to I think have breakfast with my roommate at the time and a friend of mine and uh I'm gonna like Evan Rach not Evan Rach horror like American Horror Story actress and her boyfriend. I can't think of their names right now. It's escaping me. They walk in and everyone was kind of like pointing them out. And I remember my roommate was like, "Oh, wouldn't it be crazy if you're famous someday?" And I was like, "Oh, that'd be great, you know." And he's like, "Wouldn't that be weird to have people come up to you?" And we had that conversation. And then he leaves to go pay the parking meter, and I go to the bathroom, and then I come out, and there's Dutch. He's just like standing there, and he's like, "Excuse me, Suziey Block." And I was like, I didn't know if I was getting served like legal paper. I was like, yes, you know? He's like, I'm a huge fan. And I'm like, bullshit. Because I thought, he's like, no, really, I saw you in Entrance and it's one of my favorite films. You're just incredible in it. And I'm like, my, who put you up to this? Who might know, like, this is bullshit. He's like, no, really. And he's like, no. And I'm like, no. And then my roommate comes back and I was like, did you? And he's like, what? And I'm like, wait, you're serious? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, oh my God, thank you. And we started chatting. He's like, I'm writing a movie. I would love for you to read the script. I would love, for you to be in it. And I was like, does it pay? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, I'll do it. I was like, it's fine. He's like, do you want to read it first? I'm like, no, it's fine. I'll just do it. I wasn't doing anything. And I was like, I would love to do it. Just wanted to go film something. And so that's how it happened. And I filmed Infernum. And then, Dutch is from that tiny town that we filmed Infernum. And so it was the pandemic, and I was home in Michigan just with my mom. And he calls me one day and he's like, I have this idea of filming something. I'm so bored. I want to, like pull my not like my hair out. I have nothing to do here in Ely. I want to do something creative. Do you want to film this with me? And I was like, sure. He's like, well, we can do it over Zoom. And I was like, okay. And that's kind of how it started. And I don't get the full script of Horror in the High Desert. I just get what I'm supposed to do. So every time I see those movies, I'm always like, oh, I don't know what's going to happen either. And it's so fun to watch. But yeah, it just kind of started that way. And then we'd have a conversation like you and I are having a conversation. And he'd be like, okay, so like just make it more this. And then, oh, okay, so just go ahead. And I would and then that movie blew up too. And I was like, wow. And he's like, we're going to do another one. I'm like, okay, great. And I just had the worst haircut of my life. And I filmed that second one. And I was like, oh,
Well, I
everyone
know
makes fun
fans
of hair.
are.
And that second one, it's so bad. And Dutch was like, I don't want you wearing a hat. I was like, but my hair. He's like, it's not that bad. I'm like, it's bad, Dutch. I look like Elvira, but it's fine.
Well, I know fans are very much looking forward to the fourth one, which keeps being kind of teased out, but I
Yeah.
it's coming.
Yeah, I haven't filmed my part. I always film my stuff the last. I'm always the last bit to be filmed for those. But we're doing it in February because I know he likes to have it for there's like a film festival, found footage festival in San Francisco. And we had the Horror in the High Desert, the first one, I think, there, and the second one, but it was already out. And then we had the third one premiere there, and it was so much fun because people came from like like a couple came from Pennsylvania, and I was like, "Holy cow, you came all the way from Pennsylvania to watch it." I was like, "This is crazy. Thank you. This is so nice." But yeah, I don't even know I don't know what they are either. He has yet to tell. He hasn't even told me. I've
Uh,
had some guesses, but they haven't been correct. So I'm like, oh,
so it's a
uh,
waiting game.
yeah. I was like, are they fairies? Because I watched like the Watchers, and I was like, this. It seemed like that trailer kind of seemed Horror in the High Desert-ish. And then when I watched the movie, I was like, are they? Is it about fairies? And he's like, no, not fairies. I was like, okay. So
Um,
anyway,
as a wrap up, because I'm embarrassed to say I've got 5 minutes left on the call.
no, don't worry.
Is well, two things. Is there a little bit of a hint you can give us about what the future holds for you and any projects you can kind of hint or dole out?
Yeah, I did a movie with Dallas actually. It's called Interaction. It's getting submitted for film festivals now. It's another kind of slow burn. It's very much in the entrance realm. I think fans of entrance will absolutely love this movie. we shot it in New York, and I don't play a good character. I actually get to play someone a bit creepy, and that was such a fun challenge to take on and so much fun to do. And he lives in New York in a tiny old farmhouse. Very creepy. And so it's filmed mostly there. And yeah, I think that one, he sent me the trailer just recently, and I think it's going to be good. It's about a girl who is like she cleans houses, and she kind of like a peeping Tom, but in like the audio sense. So she records people without them knowing, and then listens to them. And yeah, it's it's good. It's good. I think it's going to be great. I can't wait. And yeah, the fourth whore in the high desert as well. And I did a movie called The Dead Place, which just had a trailer come out, I think yesterday. And that one has David Howard Thornton, who is the Terrifier. He plays the bad guy in this movie. And I think that one's going to be fun. That's just like a fun slasher horror film. I play a mom. So my son is, it's like The Sixth Sense, but with like bad demons and possession, I think.
That's all
My
sounds
son,
awesome.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
That's what I'm doing.
Final question. Is there a
Okay.
specific genre that you have yet to tackle that you kind of want to venture into, or are you kind of going to stick with the horror genre?
I'll venture into any genre. I would love to do like more comedy. I don't get a chance to do a lot of comedy. I've done a little, got my toes wet, but I love being funny and silly. I think that's why horror is fun because like the behind the scenes of horror is always a good time. Um, so yeah, I think like comedy would be really good. I wouldn't mind like a sitcom of some sort, a fun like I would love to do a Christmas Hallmark film movie if anyone is out there casting. I would kill to be in a Hallmark Christmas film. My mother would be so excited, but I would love it. Big city girl meets small town guy anytime. Please sign me up.
Well, I hope that comes down the pike for you. Susie,
Yeah,
thank
me
you so
too.
much. Thank you so much for taking the time to.
Thank you. I'm so happy you reached out. Thank you so much. This has been so
Absolutely.
much fun. Yeah, I appreciate it.